Jonathon Aslay, welcome to the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast. Thank you so much for
Well,
taking part in this interview today. I'm very happy to have you here. For those who are
well, I'm
unfamiliar,
flattered to be here. Oh,
I'm flattered you're here too. For those who are unfamiliar with your work, could you tell us what you do?
well, I'm a dating and relationship coach for women,
Mhm.
specializing in what I call midlife, which I say is after baby making years and before retirement. So most of my audience is 40, 50, 60, and even 70-year olds. I've grouped them all into that category.
So, what inspired you to follow this path, and how did you discover that you had a talent for it?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, it really began through my online dating addiction.
Mhm.
After going through a divorce and turning 40 back in 2005-ish, I found myself out in the dating marketplace and using online dating as a way to meet people. And what happened was I realized that over the course of a year, I kept thinking the problem with dating was the women until I really looked in the mirror and said, oh my gosh, I'm the common denominator. And I began chatting with women all across the country. I think it was feeding a lack within myself at that moment and hearing their stories, hearing their experiences, um, led me to kind of like all of a sudden I just started giving advice, like how to improve your online dating profile, how to communicate men. And through this process, I began reading books and learning everything I could about relationships and how to make for a successful relationship. And then I thought, gosh, I was going through this emotional calamity in my life professionally. Why not turn this into a business? And I I I burned the boats back in 2009, and I haven't looked back.
Amazing. 2009, you said.
Yeah.
The same as me.
Yes.
Yes, it's been 15 years next year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in real estate at the worst time ever, and I just thought, you know what, I'm going to become a sex blogger. So I burnt the
Well,
boats as well. Yeah. So I'm very curious. When I discovered you a few weeks ago, I was being targeted with your videos on YouTube. So
okay.
I'd never heard the term before, midlife dating advice. So how does this vary from, let's say, younger dating advice? What's the difference?
Love this question. So I want you to think about this for a moment. People in their 20s and 30s, to some degree, are like blank sheets of paper. I mean, they've
Mhm.
only been an adult for such a short period of their life. Um, And so that's one comparative difference is that people in their 20s and 30s are really just beginning to explore what this thing called life is outside of being with their parents. Okay, number one. Number two, people in their 20s and 30s are oftentimes in the dating realm looking to mate with someone so they can begin a family with that person.
Mhm.
Okay. So their primary goal is choosing a husband, a wife to make babies with and raise a family. So that's their primary vision, if you will. Okay. Now, fast forward to the 40, 50, 60s, and even 70-year olds. Roughly, and this is anecdotal, roughly 75% of singles over 45 years old are divorced. So
Mhm.
right now you have a complete different dynamic versus that blank sheet of paper. You have someone who's gone through a divorce, most likely. You also have widowers in that category, and you've also widowed and widowers, and you also have the never married in that category, but it still represents a small percentage until as you get older in age. Okay. Divorce comes with it a unraveling of the tapestry of a life you built with someone else. Okay.
Mhm.
And in that, oftentimes there's emotional struggles that come with it with divorce. You can have a contentious divorce. You can have a contentious relationship with an ex spouse, especially if you have children. Um, that's some of the things that happen. Also, in midlife, we experience what I call is what most people call midlife crisis. I call it when your blueprint of what you thought your life was going to be like in your 20s and 30s, you think you're going to be the next Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk or something like that. I'm thinking for men, and for women maybe they want to be Princess Diana or something like that. So we have this vision of our life and it collides with our reality. And that's what I call midlife crisis, when where you thought your life was going to be like collides with your actual reality. And oftentimes it's not the same. So in that, there's an emotional crisis that happens. So, okay, why is this so important? Dating in midlife oftentimes this midlife crisis, this blueprint colliding reality, uncovers our childhood wounds and our adult traumas that affect how we operate as adults in life. More importantly, our negative patterns and our limiting beliefs. So, what I mean to say is, in midlife, we've got a lot of emotionally dysfunctional, wounded human beings mating with one another, but they're incapable of actually forming healthy relationships. So I draw attention to the importance of what I wrote in my book, What the Heck is Self Love Anyway? The
Mhm.
importance of personal development, self help, and spiritual work so we can overcome the challenges of partnering with someone who is rather wounded or incapable of being in a relationship.
Do you have this program in the US called First Dates? Have you heard of it? It's in the UK. It's been in a
Mm,
few other countries. Have you heard of this program?
I'm not heard it specifically, but I'm sure I can kind of speculate what the what the framework is. Now you have me curious, so can you just share it with us real quick?
Yeah, it's you probably find some clips on YouTube. Well, it's basically different couples go for a first date in a restaurant and there's cameras everywhere. And it's in the UK.
Oh,
And in the UK, they try and make good matches. Here in Spain, where I'm living, they make the worst matches.
okay.
For example, I'm a vegan. They would probably put me with a butcher, just to kind of make TV. Whereas in the UK, I mean, you get the kind of good-looking younger people having dates, and they're just, looking at physical beauty, etc. But then the older ones, they have the most interesting stories to tell, because I find it interesting that some people signed up for conventional lifestyles and then suddenly, boom, the universe has a different plan for them. I find that really
Yeah.
interesting, because I find there's also a certain smugness in some married people. They think that's it, life is sorted, but they don't realize that, divorce can happen to any couple. And then you kind of have
Yeah.
this whole rewriting of who you are as an individual, especially with females, because they are, all their attention is going to the others, like the children, the family, and they're not really focusing on themselves so much as an individual, and they have to go back to that individual in a midlife dating
Yeah.
scenario. Yeah.
Well, dating in midlife is rather a dysfunctional technology. And let
Hmm.
me explain what I mean, because I said a kind of a powerful word, a dysfunctional technology. We oftentimes choose people based on certain superficial criteria, whether how tall they are or how they physically look or whether or not they're a vegan or a meat eater. And I said that intentionally for a moment. I'll explain why. Um, because it's not based on the person's character, it's
Hmm.
based on certain criteria of compatibility, which I understand. Now, here's the thing. I suspect, and I'm going to use you because you brought it up. If veganism has to do with a moral value, then I understand the importance of being with someone who shares that moral value, if you will. If it's just more of a lifestyle choice, you can actually get along with a meat eater fine, provided the two of you have good communication skills, good relationship skills, high emotional maturity, compatibility in other areas, because we're never going to find someone perfectly aligned. So, I just wanted to use that as an example because if it's a moral thing, I understand you need to be with someone who shares your values. If it's just a lifestyle thing, that's kind of different.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've just I ruled that out because it would be impossible. So that's definitely not my part of my criteria. However, I do live alone, so I like the fact that there is just vegetables in my fridge. There's nothing, everything's alive.
Yeah. No,
So
I
that's
understand.
yeah, it can be quite
And by
hard.
the way, there
Mm.
is an importance to choosing people that are what we call like me, you know.
Mm.
And the more we find like me, like me, like me, like me, the more aligned two people are. The reality is, though, you're going to find differences, and your capacity to navigate those differences through good conflict resolution skills is really that's the primary reason why relationships fail. Most couples don't know how to resolve their conflicts, their differences, if you will. And
Mm.
I don't mean conflict in this violent sense. I just mean differences. Most individuals, excuse me, are rather myopic, self-centric, and in their own bubble of wanting to be right versus choosing wanting to be happy.
Yes, let's go to your book then. I read your book. What the heck is self-love anyway? One of the incredible privileges I have as a podcaster is that I interview authors. So I actually read books. I love reading. And then I speak to the author, which is just amazing. I've finished reading
You
your
read
book.
my book?
I did. I read it yesterday.
Well,
I read it
thank you.
until, I mean, I read it over the last few days. I also wanted to read 8 Dates because you recommend that a lot, but it wasn't going to come until Sunday. So I would have had that, it would have been after this meeting with you today.
Yeah.
So I'll leave that for another time. But anyway, I wanted to read your book, and I was interested in so you're a dating coach, but what inspired you to actually write a book about self-love? And I want to just make one more comment. I'm never going to
Sure.
look at condiments in the same way again.
Oh, you know what? I should read you my online dating profile because I make a reference to it in there as well. So what inspired me was, well, I began writing a book called Compassionate Dating:
Mm.
Why Modern Romance Needs a Makeover. And please forgive me, I'm just pulling something up that I want to read to you because you brought it up. So I began writing this idea of how can we date from more of a compassionate, loving place. Um, Prior to that, though, I had done all these blogs called Self Love Means This, Self Love Means This. I had like 30 or 40 blogs what self love means. Okay, put that in a box for a second. In July of 2018, I lost my 19-year-old son to an accident. And in that space of emotional chaos, if you will, I made a conscious choice. I can grieve with suffering, or I can grieve with love. And I thought, what does it mean to grieve with love? And as I dug deeper, it's really about finding that place where you love yourself, you love humanity, you love life, you don't need someone else to love you for you to feel good about yourself. And 2 months after he passed, I began writing this book. Actually, someone reached out to me and said, I will ghostwrite your book for you. And that's what was the impetus for it. And within 9 months, I finished it and published it in his honor. But at the same time, self love, a lot of people confuse the word self love. So I don't necessarily think of it as I don't think of it as self-care like manicures, pedicures, massage. I think of self-worth, self-esteem, self-reliance, self-confidence, um, and all those things that embody how to live a most fulfilled life. And so the trajectory of the book happened more by accident, literally and figuratively. At the same time, it really embodies my message going forward because let me just share this. I realized that the number one emotional health issue most everybody faces: I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, and I'm not likable. And dating triggers this like nobody's business. I
Mm.
mean, dating triggers all of our stuff. So while the book isn't a dating book, it's really a very simplistic approach to encouraging personal development, self-help, and spiritual work.
Amazing. Just touched on something there about healing in a relationship. It makes me. I saw something from another creator on Instagram recently who's talked about all these different healing modalities like plant medicine, breath work, meditation. But the biggest thing of healing is actually a relationship, because you have to face all of your childhood traumas, all of your wounds, and you can't schedule them. They can just blow up at any time. And
Yeah.
it's a great learning. And also, I think as we get older, I think we are kind of more resistant to that type of healing. I think we become very set in our ways, and that can be another big obstacle for dating later in life. I think two of my
Yeah, actually,
yeah, yeah.
oh no, I was going to say, coming back to that's a perfect illustration of when people in their 20s and 30s, that blank sheet of paper I mentioned, they get to 40s, 50s, and 60s. They're rather entrenched in their belief systems, their ideologies, their way of being. So people become rather, fixed, and it's so why it's so much more challenging to connect with someone if your life is rather rigid, if you will.
Mm-hmm. I have two I have two regrets in life. I don't think you should regret anything, but I have two regrets. I've made a video about it. One of them
Okay.
is having smoked tobacco. But that's a terrible thing. There's no way
Okay.
to justify that. And the second thing is not loving myself enough. I mean, I think I
Mm.
look back at all of the situations I've been in, especially with my personal life. Now I take responsibility. When I was younger, it was like blaming the other person in the situation. And now I realize I've come to my own realization that self-love is so you know, connected with our relationships, because when you are coming from a place of self-love, you won't accept certain things. For example, maybe let's say 10 years ago, with my job as a sexual wellness creator, I mean, I test and review sex toys. So I have a spare room with 800 toys, and a lot of men can be intimidated by that. And I found that I was attracting, let's say, unavailable men, people who were in polyamorous relationships. I'm not polyamorous at all, but people who, or someone who was with married, but I didn't know. So I just found I was attracting these people and just getting 10% of them, or something like that. And I just had I had a lot of wounds as well. But what's changed in the last few years is that my self-concept, especially my self-love, has grown so much that I no longer accept that. And I really believe it's a self-love thing. Would you agree that self-love helps you make better decisions in dating?
Well, yeah, because yes, and what again, coming back to what self-love is, it's really the embodiment of I don't need someone else to love me for me to feel validated, good about myself, you know, from that perspective. So that's what self-love is. Now, that's not to suggest that we don't have some interdependence with another person and we form attachments to other people, but it's really the embodiment of your sovereignty, your self-worth, in that particular case. I can't help but be a coach for a second. Do you mind?
Please.
So,
I feel very
you know,
fortunate.
I'm just saddened when you say I have regret that I didn't find this out sooner. You know, regret is just unnecessary suffering, you know, and it's a mind game for yourself, because you could turn it around and say, wow, I'm so grateful. I'm just offering
Mhm.
you know, perspective here. I'm so grateful I learned it when I did, because I will say this, Venus, there are a lot of people in their 60s and 70s wish they could be your age and learn this stuff. So just giving you some perspective out there on regret. With that said, you know, there's nothing easy about this stuff. I do believe life is a journey, an individual journey, and how we go about it, particularly from an introspective, you know, place, is where fulfillment lies. I went to a workshop that talked about happiness, and it drew a horizontal line and it drew a vertical line. And the horizontal line is I drive a Hyundai over here and I have a Ferrari over here. And the idea is I'm going to be happy if I have this. But most people, once they have a Ferrari, they realize it's just four wheels, maybe a faster engine. It certainly might make one feel better about themselves to everybody else in the world, but they're not necessarily happy. Even Warren Buffett, one of the richest people in the world, he drives a station wagon, so it's just four wheels. The vertical line of happiness is when we're in a state of love, and most importantly, a state of learning. When we learn something new, when we learn something about ourselves, we actually form greater, you know, there's more serotonin being released, there's more, you know, endorphins being released when we're actually learning something new, when we're loving, and when we learn something about ourselves. So that's a vertical line of happiness, and that's just something I've learned and subscribed to, um, in life.
That takes me to my next question. I saw an incredible post on your Instagram a couple of weeks ago, which was about chemistry versus compatibility. I think it's easy to be blinded by chemistry, especially when, if you probably know yourself, most dates are really uncomfortable. I mean, even if you find conversation easy, even for me, it can be very awkward to be in situations where with someone you've just met, and you have these expectations. The first 7 seconds, like, oh no. So when you do find chemistry, it's like, wow. But then we're not really thinking logically. So what do you think about the difference between chemistry and compatibility, and should we have both? How important is chemistry?
Yeah, so I love this question, and I liken it to, and I think to the extent that chemistry, what's the word chemistry? It's chemical. It's chemicals being released from our brain that says we like this person for the most part, or we're attracted to them, or we're, you know, that we need to bond with them. So there's that physical chemistry. There's a different type of chemistry that isn't discussed very frequently, and that's energetic connection, energetic connection or chemistry, where you connect with the person not from a lustful place or a limerence place, but a real spiritual place, a real knowing. And I do believe that's rare to experience. Most people experience lust or limerence type of chemistry. But forging ahead with compatibility. What is compatibility? Compatibility is shared values. Compatibility is lifestyles that are blendable. Compatibility is a shared vision of what you want in relationship. And most importantly, compatibility requires emotional maturity and good relationship skills to navigate this chemistry that you have. So most people are focused on the chemistry piece and not necessarily the compatibility piece. So yeah, we could come back to the vegan as an example. And I respect that. You could say, you know what, I need someone who's more aligned with me here for a variety of different reasons. So that might be the first question you ask someone, rather than going out on a date with someone who's not compatible in that sense. Go out with someone who already shares that belief, that value. And then if you have chemistry, all the better.
Interesting perspective. I'm going to see a vegan friend later who for her it's much more has much more importance than for me, because I just kind of like I'm kind of used to not finding that, and also the vegans I find I'm not really attracted to as well. So that there's that as well. So
You know, it's interesting. You just said something right there that
mhm.
just set up a belief system.
Uh-huh.
Okay, most vegans are I'm not, attracted to. Okay. The fact that you even put that out sets the energy that you're not going to be attracted to a vegan.
Mhm.
So the shift in perspective is, you know what? Um, it's raining great men who I'm attracted to who are vegans. By shifting that languaging, you
Mhm.
actually become more of a magnetic attractor for what you want. And
Great.
this is the tricky part about attraction. So let me tell you a quick little story. I went to a workshop it's the Hoffman process, and it was 20 men and 19 women. And you're not allowed to share what you do for a living until the second last day. And I shared with everyone I'm a dating relationship coach. So all the women were like surrounding me at the jacuzzi. All the guys were giving me the finger. But one woman said to me, Jonathan, when I got here, I looked around the room and there were two men I was attracted to. And it was myself, and I was grateful that she put that me in that category. And there was another guy looked like the Marlboro Man, very rugged, very like a cowboy kind of looking guy. And she said, after spending a week with all these men, I would date every other man in this room, because it was that initial physical attraction that she said, I'm not attracted to. When she actually got to meet all of the men at their hearts, they all became attractive to her. So this is where its trickiness about attraction is, can we really fall in love with a heart versus the physical aspects of a person? It's just a question I ask everybody, not a statement of fact.
Yeah, it's very interesting, the whole love thing, because I have my theories about love. I read this amazing book called Cupid's Poisoned Arrow. It's all about
Mm.
the neuroscientific kind of perspective on love, about the dopamine and all of that. And then there's I believe that kind of in love thing is an internal process where someone is provoking this sensation within you. But then I think there's an outward type of love, which is about you want the best for that person, you care for them, and even if they're not with you, you want them to be well and happy. So I think it's nice to have a combination of both of those
Well, the
things.
tricky part with that, though, and I'm not just dispelling that, you know, people talk about love at first sight. Well, you can be physically attracted to someone at first sight, but can you really love them? I mean, if you met someone you're physically attracted to, and on their third date they told you had cancer, and a month later they're in the hospital and there's vomit dripping down their face, will you wipe the vomit off their face? You just said, I love this person, but
Mm.
no, you might love that they're attractive. You might love the way you might feel in the moment. But I really believe true love is wiping the vomit off of someone's face who's going through chemotherapy. That's true love to me. Those are just feelings of excitement that you might experience early on. And I
Mm.
say this because if this was all true love, then everybody would be happy in a relationship. And that's not the case. So it's just, I mean, I'm not discounting what the person said, but I don't like the frame of love. I prefer it's like there's a lust or limerence or an infatuation or attraction, but I don't like to characterize that as love, just for me.
I interviewed another, I think she's a psychologist. She's the author of Buddha's Bedroom. She's kind of bringing spirituality and relationships together. And she talked about love at first sight just being a projection, which I really believe that, because I
Yeah.
think that just kind of someone seems to be filling your blanks, but it's over time that you get to really discover what, compatibility, and seeing people vomiting and all these different situations. That's when true love is. I think there's something very alluring and enticing about um, familiarity rather than mystery.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want you to think about the word trust for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
What is trust? And I'm putting this in this category of love. Trust, we oftentimes think about it in the context of fidelity, for example. I think of trust as, does this person have my best interest at heart? Do
Mm-hmm.
they really, are there, do I look at this person and say their best interest or my best interest? So when someone says I love you where you barely know, it's most of the time, like you said earlier, a projection. It's mostly about how this person is making you feel, but it has nothing to do with how you really feel about them. That takes, trust is built through continuity. Continuity is like roots to a tree. The more experiences you have with someone, the more you build roots into the ground, and the more roots you have, the stronger the relationship becomes. So, we're many of us are hoping for some just Cupid's arrow to hit us and everything's going to magically work out. But it comes back to when you're working on yourself individually and you're in alignment with your values, you're in alignment with how relationships work. That's where 8 Dates and some of the other Gottman books work. When you're in alignment with your emotional maturity and your relationship skills, then your goal is to seek someone who's also in alignment with you, because then you have harmony to build a really strong foundation together that's like this.
Definitely, I definitely agree with that. I'm more interested in depth than the superficial side, because that can be easily
Oh,
replaceable.
come on, you're human. We're all
Yeah,
superficial.
yeah, but depth is really something that really I find a lot more intriguing. And I think you can maintain NRE, like new relationship energy, for much longer if you're willing to kind of go into those depths with someone else and really discover. I find, for me, familiarity is when you start, let's say going to the toilet with the door open. Maybe we're in a bad example, but when you're in a stage where you can be relaxed with someone, or just and just I find that really sexy when you can just completely relax with someone, or um when you start to show
Well,
sides of yourself that no one sees, not the best side, but just the real side, and you get to see someone's quirks. I find that's what's made me fall in love with people in the past, or even creating words that only you understand, like creating your own codes or your own language. I mean, I find that
yeah.
really, really interesting and deep.
Well, ultimately, isn't that the point of a relationship? Isn't the
Mm,
point to just be yourself in,
mm,
warts and all, and I don't mean to be your bad self and be accepted for it. I
mm.
don't believe that you can be in a state of pain and trauma and just expect someone else to just accept it and call that unconditional love. I'm talking about free to be yourself. So God forbid, you left the toilet door open and it's not a crime, or I left the toilet seat up and it's not a crime,
Wow.
so to speak, because that's just being human. It's interesting about depth. Um, I was in a significant relationship that ended about 5 months ago. And I'm back out in the dating marketplace. And I haven't met anyone in these 5 months, but I've been communicating with a few people. And many times people just want to talk about themselves. They don't really ask about the other person. See, to me, depth is asking about the other person.
Mm.
And when you actually ask personal questions of another person, it actually makes that other person feel desired.
Mm.
Like when you're actually being inquisitive. And so many cases, people will talk about themselves. So they're giving you the information, but it's different when you're asking for the information and then sharing, and then going back and asking another question based on that information, and then sharing, and then doing this as a dance together. See, the real problem with dating today is most humans don't really know how to get to know someone else. They don't know how to really get to know who that person is on the inside. We're so focused mostly on the exterior and the surface questions instead of the deeper questions that really tell you who this person is.
Could you give us an example of 3 deep questions for a first date that you
All
like
right.
being
So,
asked?
well, you brought up something. Okay. So you brought up something about me, and I just want to read this because it's in my dating profile. So let's just say someone read this, okay, what I'm about to share. And I said, the way I describe myself is an outwardly looking alpha male with a big teddy bear heart. I just happen to be 6'2" and 205 pounds. So I'm just saying physically, I'm bigger than most men. Okay. I said, maybe I'd say I'm a good guy with an edge, and yet I'm human with insecurities, or dare I say, flaws. The thing that freaks me out most is condiments. I can't stand to be near ketchup or mustard, and yet what I can do is hold your heart like a precious jewel as your lover and heart protector. So I set a volume of information right there. Depth would be, wow, that's by the way, so depth would be something like this. I read in your dating profile about condiments, and I just want to say to you at first how vulnerable that was to share that. So I just want to give you props. Okay. In that, I'm really curious what causes you to be afraid of ketchup and mustard. Okay. Why is that depth? Because you're asking a question about a fear.
Mm.
Okay. We're not talking about the fear of like, a mugger coming up with a gun, and robbing you kind of fear. I'm talking about I was vulnerable, which represents depth. Okay. And then by asking a question about that, I'm curious, I'm fascinated. What causes you to be afraid of, ketchup and mustard? Sort of. By the way, it's all condiments: ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise, and relish. Well, at least those are the four horsemen of the apocalypse for me. And in that question, they're going deeper than the surface instead of what do you do for a living? Although that is a question. Okay, so let's pick that one for a second. What do you do for a living? Okay, someone shares what they do. The depth question is, what inspired you to do that for a living?
Okay.
That's depth.
I asked you that on the fourth question, on the first questions. That's pretty good.
What's that?
I asked you what inspired you to follow this path. So yeah,
Yeah.
tick.
So do you see it's a one question,
Mm.
but then going deeper and asking another question, what inspired you? And then acknowledging that inspirement, like saying, wow, that's so fascinating. Can you tell me more about that? That's so what this is you're now building what's called intimacy. Into me you see.
I love
Okay.
it.
I didn't make this up. I heard it years ago. Intimacy. Into me you see. So by asking these more granular questions, these more micro questions, you're getting into understanding how someone operates. And there's nothing more desirable than a person wanting to get to know how you operate.
It must be interesting for you when you do explain what you do. I mean, I have this situation myself. When you explain what you do, I mean, how do people react? Do they assume that you'd
Um,
be the perfect? Because I mean, do they expect that you're going to have everything sorted as far as relationships are concerned?
Well, there's a couple things, and that's a great question. I want to bring this back to you because you said something earlier that I wanted to acknowledge. Um, so, for a couple people, it's fascinating to me. I could share what I do for a living on a date, and a woman won't ask me one question about that. And to me, I go, wow, you have a great opportunity to get to know how I think, and you just missed that one. Okay. So that happens. Some women are amazingly fascinated and they want to hear all about it, but it ends up turning out to be a coaching session for
Mm.
them. Okay. And then there are some that I don't want to use the word intimidated, but because I have a human behavior background, my oxygen is processing shit. Like that's my
Mm.
oxygen. Okay. So if someone isn't capable or is uninterested in processing their stuff, I will be perceived as very exhausting to them. I wouldn't be a good match for them. So the type of woman that I'm most aligned with is someone who is willing to look at their stuff, willing to process it with me, willing to accept my perspective. I'm willing to hear their perspective, and working together, as we said earlier, or as you mentioned earlier, that we get our greatest healing when we're in relationship. And a significant percentage of men and women, let me just say this to all the women who are watching this, because women seem to think that they hold the brass ring on being evolved and emotional and everything. You women are no effing picnic either. You guys are just as traumatized. You got your shit, no different than men. It's just a different side of the coin. Because I can tell you, as a man out there, I run across just as many, for lack of a better word, wounded women as there are wounded men, from what I observe in coaching. So I want to bring up something you
Mm.
said. I have 800 toys in my room. You
Spare room,
know,
none in my room. That would be
or
scary.
yeah, oh, excuse me. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So, I wasn't intimidated hearing that. But I did have a reaction, and it felt as though that there might be too much emphasis on sex and pleasure in that, in that. I'm just giving you a perspective of how I reacted hearing that. And while sex and pleasure is critically important to me, it only represents a small facet of what I seek in relationships. So if some men might perceive that as an like an excessive need in one category and not enough in other categories. Just a perception I had that I wanted to offer that for you.
Yeah, I think for me, it's my job, so it's not like I'm using 800 toys, and I just think pleasure is very important, especially with a lot of women are not connected with their bodies, and sex can be seen as something that's just for men or they're serving the men. Whereas I think when a woman is connected with her body, that you can create this whole incredible space of intimacy. Like I say, SEX, sacred energy exchange, which is something very
Mm.
very beautiful, and that's what my mission is, to raise orgasmic awareness. So that's my job. And then obviously I'm a very normal person who I wear a hoodie and no makeup a lot of the time. So I like people to see through my mission and my job, and just to see who the real me is. Like I'm a sober vegan, I'm quite homely, I'm very kind of down to earth. I like people to see that and not be intimidated. But it has served as a very good filter though. And maybe you can empathize with that with your job as well, because some people can be like, wow. But I mean, I like
Well,
people to see
exactly.
me for
That
me. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that was exactly it. It's interesting. I have 800 books behind me, and it's not 800 books, but it's something close to that. So I can recognize that in the same venue that's your profession. I think for men in particular, though, because pleasuring a woman is attached to our ego,
Mm-hmm.
that it could be, to the extent not so much intimidating, but it might create an insecurity that we won't be able to pleasure you to the same degree something else could. So I think so. What this invites, coming back to intimacy, coming back to depth, it invites conversation. And within that conversation, a deeper, richer conversation about, mutual pleasure and the capacity to be able to give each other mutual pleasure in the bedroom could be explored through that conversation. I've got 800 toys in this,
Mm-hmm.
spare room kind of thing.
Definitely. Um, so you talk about online dating. Do you what do you think about offline dating? Is that
Well, Well, let's just think about what online dating. Well, let's just come back to the word dating and the differentiation between online and organically meeting. So, online is simply a portal to meet people. Okay. Offline is a different portal to meet people. So you're not actually dating in the cyber sense. It's just meeting. So, what is my perception of meeting people online versus organically? The challenge as we age is that we are no longer in an environment with single eligible people. So I just want you to think about when you're in grade school, everybody is single and eligible. When in high school, most everybody is single and eligible until someone gets pregnant. Uh, in college is probably your greatest, environment for people that go to college, that where they're single and eligible. When you turn 40, 50 and people, you're no longer surrounded by single eligible people to the same degree you are in your 20s, first, and just out in your daily life. Add to that, COVID kind of put us in a bubble of being in home more than ever before. And a lot of people feel safer at home than out in the world. Okay. So where online dating really escalated, or online meeting. Okay. The thing is you have it's faster to meet people online, but you have to sift through a lot more people. It's like
Mm.
opening up the telephone book and just start randomly dialing. That's what that's like. Okay. Being out in the world requires doing a little bit of homework. Is this person married? Are they in a relationship? What are they seeking? Whereas at least online, there's hopefully you're with people who are serious, and not, I mean, it's not always, but seriously want a life partner, whereas you don't know that in the organic sense. Now you can go to singles events. Okay, that's a way to meet people. You can do the hobbies that you like to do, but keep in mind, you do a hobby and there's 20 people in the group, you've gone through all of them, you're not interested. Well, then you're not going to meet anyone at that particular hobby, but you're still going. So then how can you curate new people through those hobbies and interests? That would be another thing to do within the scope of that hobby or interest. But once again, online is just simply a vehicle, is a spoke in the wheel.
Definitely. I've never done online dating apps actually, because I've never done them. I've done online dating when it was websites years ago, because I used to be working in a local radio station here in Barcelona. So I didn't want people to know like how many meters away, and I had a recognizable face around here. So I just didn't feel comfortable about it. So I found it quite challenging. But then
So
I
when was the last time you went on a first date?
maybe earlier this year. Yeah.
Just one?
Just a couple. Yeah. But I mean, yeah. Yeah.
And how did you meet the person?
I have created an incredible group on Meetup called Barcelona Conscious Connections,
Okay.
which is a brilliant. And we have these pieces of paper on the table. We go for vegan dinners with non-vegans, and we have these questions, like icebreaker questions, that really encourage deep conversation. So we kind of ask where you're from, how long you've been in Barcelona, what do you do. So we have these other questions. Like one of my favorites is, when was the last time you did something for the first time? It's a great question. And then we get some incredible conversations, but everything, it ultimately goes back to dating and love, because that's what people really
Yeah.
want to know about, especially people who are coming on there to a meetup on Saturday night. You can be pretty sure that 90% of them are single, and definitely ready to mingle. And they're just looking for something a bit deeper, because this is a sober group as well. So we're just looking
Okay.
for a bit more depth. And that's something that I created for my own needs. And I've seen that it's
Yeah.
just working for so many people. We've got 1,900 members now. I mean, it's
Well,
just
then you need
incredible.
to just do more events
Yeah.
because, earlier this year, that was 8 months ago. Come on, do some more.
So I saw one of your videos that you don't subscribe to the idea of the notion of female energy and masculine energy. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, to the extent that I don't, so the way I view masculine and feminine energy and the way it's characterized in the dating realm is where I have some resistance. Okay. So, for example, some female coaches will say when a woman is in her masculine energy, it's a turnoff. Okay, for example, when she's controlling, when she's criticizing, when she's in a state of, like work and everything, that's a turnoff. Well, first off, controlling and criticism, that's just bad behavior. That's not masculine behavior,
Mm.
because what you're really saying, the minute you say controlling, criticism, overly focused, in your professional life, what you're saying is when a man is, so what, now let's use it in the male context. He's masculine, okay? And he's controlling and he's criticizing, and he's over focused on their career. That's not attractive either.
Mm,
So that's the first premise of what I don't like when it's characterized that way. To me, masculine simply means doing, and feminine simply means receiving. Okay. A healthy person is both a giver and a receiver equally. It's
mhm,
not weighted one way or the other, because you'd have an imbalanced relationship if the expectation that men are supposed to be the leaders and they're the givers and they do everything, and you just sit back in your feminine energy and don't do shit. It's, that guy is going to lose interest with you as well. I think a healthy relationship is two people that are both giver and receivers, and that's the way I characterize masculine and feminine energy. That doesn't go the way, that's not the subscription that the spiritual realm and the yoga realm and everything else talks about, polarity and stuff like that. That's just my version of it. But then again, masculine and feminine energy is not a science. It's
mm,
just a construct.
mm,
So it's not based on anything scientific. And here's where I have another issue. He's 60% masculine. That means she has to be 40% feminine to have the polarity properly. The fucking gauge the percentage a person in at any given time, and it fluctuates at any given time. That's where I have take umbrage or issue with that narrative. And I like to play with it and make fun of it. Which, if
definitely,
I
it's
turned
interesting.
you off
Mm.
right now, I apologize, but that's just
No,
my
no, I
belief
think it's
system.
interesting because I find it as I identify as a feminist, but it's interesting the whole. I'm also very spiritual, but I find it interesting this whole concept of divine feminine and feminism. Can you be a divine feminist? I mean, I just find it interesting for me, and
Well,
what I've learned is more. I've been embracing what people know as the divine feminine because I've been very much in my masculine energy as a single woman living in Barcelona, a foreign country, a freelancer. So I've had to be very much a doer. But I've just been recently kind of going more into surrender space, and I found it really refreshing. I just love it, to be honest.
well,
Mm,
so first off, I'm a feminist, by the way. For
mm,
anyone watching, I'm a feminist. I believe that we should treat people,
mm,
and to the extent that equally, I believe that we should treat people with fairness. That's the basic premise of
mm,
feminism. So I'm a feminist, okay? To the extent that surrender, you know, most men are rigid in control. Men need to surrender equally to the same degree at women, because control makes us believe we're safe, and true faith and true um, bliss comes when we let go of control.
mm,
That's where true the thing is. Most people are the more you have to control things, the less happy people are, because that's how they feel safe. When you can actually not when I say let go of control, but surrender to the unknown, surrender to a faith, surrender to allowing things unfold. That's where true happiness, and that's not divine feminine or divine masculine. So
mm,
this is where, when we put the label on it, see, the byproduct of these labels, whether we like it or not, masculine is still male and feminine is still female, even when we call it energy. And there's a construct that is, I believe, can be detrimental when we associate it that way. So let's just call bad behavior, good behavior, good behavior. It doesn't have to be masculine, it doesn't have to be feminine. It's just being a good human being. That's what I subscribe to.
great. I just written down it. You mentioned in your book a few times the untethered soul. I read the Surrender Experiment this summer. I just love it. Have you read the Surrender Experiment?
Yeah, my surrender experiment is, where is that book? It's somewhere here.
You know,
What's that book?
I have a lot of books here. I don't know if you can see in the back, but I'm a real reader as well, and
Surrender
I
experiment right there.
I have a whole
Michael Singer,
shelf.
great work.
I have a
Yeah.
whole shelf of my podcast guests books, which is just so cool. I mean, it's just
Have
amazing.
you have you interviewed Michael Singer?
No, 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 he's not. He's on the spirituality shelf, but your book is on
Yeah.
my podcast guests shelf, which is actually getting a lot bigger, which is amazing. Yeah. So a couple of
Yeah.
quick questions for you. What are you working on at the
Sure.
moment?
I'm not working on anything new. I think every day when I shoot a video, and by the way, if you could post the link to my YouTube channel, I'd
Of
be
course.
grateful. Um, I'm constantly tweaking my perceptions. So if anything, that's how I work. Like I was thinking today about the idea of being all in. Like, what does that mean to be all in a relationship? People get confused with words like monogamy, exclusivity, and commitment. But what does it mean to just say, you know what? This person's new to me. I'm going to go all in and get to know them
Mm,
without the distraction of dating other people. I'm just going to go all in to get to know them first. And so I'm playing with what does that look like? So that's just today's conversation in my head. 2 weeks from now, I'll have a different conversation in my head, and I'll talk about that in my videos, even though the core context of what I talk about is centered around, compatibility, personal development, healthy relationships. It's the nuances that I like to play, have nooks and, have conversations with. Most people date today very, very unintentional, very ambivalent or ambiguous, if you will, to some degree. And what dating is now, relationships now are mostly either friends with benefits, situationships, or casual. Very few people are going to the depths of serious to the point of even marriage. Okay. A lot of people in midlife reject marriage because they've been hurt before. But what marriage says or living with someone says is, I'm all in,
mm,
or hopefully that's what it says. Today's relationships being casual or situationships say, I can just dip my toe, I can get my needs met, but I don't have to meet the other person's needs. And I can meet some of their needs sometimes. But you know what? The minute that person's needs become overwhelming for me, I can bow out at any time. There was a real wisdom in dating vows. It said, you know what? Through thick or thin, I'm in this to win. Through
mm.
thick or thin, I'm in this to win. I just made that up just now. Through
That's
thick
pretty
or
good.
thin, I need someone. Can you
That,
write? Can I write?
that needs
I
to be
got
an
to write that down.
Instagram
Through yeah,
post.
through thick and thin, I'm here to win.
Through thick and
And okay, I'm going to forget this. Through thick or thin, I'm here to win. What that means is we're here to win. We're both here in it together. And sadly, one person gets there and the other person doesn't. And it feels emotionally devastating when you've gone all in and the other person hasn't. Now, from a spiritual perspective, you were meant to learn a lesson. There was a
mm.
lot of healing. So, I mean, I can always, rationalize it as a benefit. But at the end of the day, it still fucking sucks. And so I'm here to encourage deeper conversations early and really mindfulness, intentionality dating. So you don't find yourself with someone who's just in it for themselves. And most people are self centric, not intentional. They're myopic. Women are no different than men. I know all of you think you're the exclusive ones, but you're not. Most people myopically date, it's their bubble. Very few people date. And like, I want you to think on a first date. Does a man or woman really meet that other person and say, what can I give to this other
Mm.
person? It's like nobody operates from a place of giving. It's mostly, what can I get? Can I get a free meal? Can I get, I get company. Can I get them to like me? You know, what
Yeah.
can I get instead of what can I give?
I do meditation with crystals. I'm really into crystals, and I sleep with
Yeah.
a rose quartz crystal, and I put it on my chest before I go to bed and just meditate every night. And I always
Yeah.
think about that of attracting love energetically. But there's a few times in my life where I thought of giving love, and I thought it was a beautiful, intention to be kind of radiate love out. So yeah, I definitely think that's it. That's interesting about
And
giving.
and and one thing, I'm going to end on this note.
Mm,
Even if you meet someone who's misaligned with you
mm,
on a date, okay, you're not attracted to them, they're unconscious, they don't have depth or whatever. What you can give them is love in that moment. And
mm,
sometimes the most loving thing to do is just to hear someone for a short period of time and allow them the space to, maybe they need to vomit whatever they're going to vomit,
Mhm.
their wounds, their traumas, and you can simply give holding space for a short period of time. That's a great way to give love, even in those spaces where you met someone and it wasn't a fit. And if you approach it that way, and I'm going to end on one more note coming back to online dating.
Mhm.
People do this thing called swiping left and right.
Mhm.
Most people feel swiping left means you're not interested. And I would say
I
women
even know
swipe left.
that.
Yeah, swiping left 95% of the time, and they can feel discouraged. What if every time you swipe left, you say, I wish you all the best. I wish you all the best. I wish you all the
Mm.
best. I wish you all the best. I wish you all the best. Because what happens is most people swipe left and they go, there's no good men out there. There's no good women. There's no good men. There's no good women. There's no good men. There's no good. Just reframe it. I wish you all the best on your journey. And what you'll find is you'll find someone you'll swipe right on.
Great.
I'm going to end on that note.
There's two more very quick questions I ask everyone.
Oh,
What's the
sure.
book that
Sure.
changed your life?
Oh, The Untethered Soul, without a doubt.
Amazing.
Actually, Marianne Williamson's Return to Love is a close second.
I have to read that. I've read the Untethered Soul, so I have to read
Oh,
that.
and then The Buddha Dated. That's a
Yeah.
close third.
I do a reader then. That's
And
great.
then Shut Up, Stop Whining and Get a Life by Larry Winget. That's a close fourth.
So I see you like reading. So
Yeah.
which phrase or affirmation or quote do you live by?
Uh, well, this is a new one. So I just wrote this the other day. Create a life so awesome that you become the reality show people want to watch.
Amazing. And where can people find you?
Well, hopefully there's a link to my YouTube channel somewhere below, but you can find me, Jonathon Aslay, right there. You can Google my name. My YouTube channel is where I have most of my fun. So go follow me there, and then you can go to my website from there after. But follow me on YouTube.
Amazing. So thank you so much for taking part in today on the Orgasmic Lifestyle Podcast. It's been a real pleasure.
Likewise, Venus, can I send you off a big gigantic Jonathan Bear hug?
Thank you. I can feel it. Yes.
Oh, thanks.